For as long as I can remember, the thing that excited me most about architecture was the actual experience of moving through spaces. Inherently a deep, engaged experience of the human being with the building. The feel of the floor under your feet, light bouncing off a wall, the quality of natural light that's coming into a space. So I think that sensorial aspect of architecture, whether it's inside a building or it's along a city street. And another thing that really excites me is when I notice that a certain space is encouraging people to talk to each other and interact. Early on in my architectural career, I would really focus on the how of architecture. I would think about how a thing would be constructed, what would the space relationships would be, what would be the materials. When I went to Yale on the Fulbright, that is when I was compelled to think about the why. And my professors at Yale would often stop me midway in the process and say, okay, you've done some beautiful sketches, but now you've got to think about why you've done them. And could there be another way of approaching? Could there be another reason for doing a certain design move? And I think that's the value that my master's education really added to me as an architect. My goal as an architect every time I design is to raise certain questions and introduce new ways of looking at building functions, for instance. So can a shopping mall be an intellectually inspiring space? Can we design a mosque that thrives on God's forces of wind, the sun and water, rather than relying on traditional elements such as domes, arches and minarets to look Islamic? Almost always what I like to have in my projects is some place for nature and, most importantly, an architecture that is sustainable for a country with scarce resources. The spaces that inspire me in Karachi are relatively unsung, and that would be the original buildings of Karachi University, designed by the French architect Michel Ecochard. There is a particular building there called the Student Teachers Club, the STC building, where the architect has created different kinds of vertical circulation elements like ramps, staircases, and spaces out of which you can view the landscape. The other thing that I love about Karachi University is the integration of landscape and architecture, and also the plantation of trees. So the landscape strategy of planting these green belts goes hand in hand with the planning of the buildings. And this is something that I, as an architect, can really learn from and incorporate in my own building. When I was at Ahad Associates as a principal architect, we designed the Habib University campus in Karachi. The feeling of seeing something built that I've designed is beyond words, really. When I'm designing on paper or on the screen, there's a different scale to it. And when the thing is actually built, all the human senses are engaged, that's when the power of that piece of architecture really becomes clear to the architect. And that's also the moment where we realize how much we can actually do as architects. And on a very personal level, I would like my daughter, for instance, to grow up in a place which has a green space, naturally ventilated, and with nice natural light in it. My name is Saifullah Sami, and I want to create extraordinary spaces that nurture and inspire.